Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode on the Sports Stories podcast. I'm your host, Seiji McSwain, and I'm going to be going over my Week 3 predictions on the NFL season. And as of right now, let me go ahead and check my notes here. I believe you guys are actually in the lead. Let me see. This is going to be a while back. Let me see. I wrote it down on the other one here. Okay, yeah, so you guys are in the lead. You guys are in the lead with a 15-16-1 record. So, congratulations. This is the first time in a while that you guys have actually beat me. But we do have more voters actually on the Instagram polls. So, if you're watching or listening to this episode and do want to vote on the games for weeks to come, just make sure that you follow the Sport Stories Instagram, sport_stories_podcast on Instagram, and you'll be able to see it there. And then I post them weekly, so I post one on Wednesday for the Thursday game, and then I post them all on Saturday for the Sunday game, so that you can vote on those, Sunday and Monday games, so you can vote on those. And then, match up the stats here. And currently I'm at a 13-18-1 record. So if you are listening and watching on my takes and betting on those takes, I'm very, very sorry. But there were some upsets though. And so you could have made your money back, technically if you're voting on the right ones. But and there's some pretty nice spreads though too. So overall pretty good week. So let's get right into week 3. Okay, so now with the first game on Amazon Prime Video, we have the Steelers at the Browns for Thursday Night Football. Now the Steelers coming off of an interesting loss. I thought they probably would have won this one. I had some faith in them to win this one, and they ended up just not winning. It was a close call in my opinion. I feel like, it was against the Patriots. I get it. The Patriots have Bill Belichick at coach. It's going to be kind of hard to beat them either way, but they just did not have an impressive showing the week before. So I was kind of sold that the Patriots were, kind of a bad team. But then all of a sudden, they showed that they weren't. Okay. Mac Jones came out there. Nelson Aguilar straight up mossed the defender on the Steelers. It was a close one near the end, but the Patriots ended up getting the dub there. Defensively, it looked okay. Obviously, it just wasn't the best performance. Offensively, it just didn't seem like anything was really going for them on the offensive side of the ball. So far this season, they haven't really been able to get Najee Harris going, who in my opinion, or at least when my predictions for the season, I thought Najee Harris probably would have been the league leading rusher, and so far I believe against the Patriots, he only had 25 rushing yards. But it is kind of a trend that I do see in the NFL as of right now, that running backs really aren't able to get it off the ground, mainly Derrick Henry. Like a lot of power backs aren't really able to get off the ground this year, probably besides Nick Chubb or Saquon Barkley, who I think are two power backs, but they also have a little, they have other tricks up their sleeves. So they're able to kind of, adapt. But it kind of seems like most of these power backs really aren't able to get the ball off the ground. Tony Pollard outperformed Zeke last week as well. Just a lot of these power backs just aren't able to get any yards from the line of scrimmage, really. I believe Najee Harris had 15 rushes, I want to say, for 25 yards. So it wasn't the best, but that could also, again, be an offensive line issue, and that kind of causes him to not do bad or not do good as well. But the Patriots, or not the Patriots, but the Steelers look like they have a decent offensive line. Just looked like nothing was really clicking against the Patriots, and the Patriots really had the Steelers' number. Now going over to the Browns side of the ball, probably one of the most embarrassing losses of the week, losing to the New York Jets with Joe Flacco at starting quarterback for the Jets, and you can just blame it on whatever that statue was in front of the stadium, because what was that? Okay, Browns fans, what was that? I didn't need to see that. Nobody else needed to see that. But Probably people are gonna probably be blaming Nick Chubb for the loss, obviously, for him running in for a touchdown to gain the 14-point lead with about a minute left. But I mean, you can't really blame it on him. It's a 2-score game with a minute left. You don't really expect your defense to allow a touchdown, then the special teams to allow an onside kick recovery, then the defense to allow another touchdown. So you can't really put all the blame on him, but obviously there's some blame being put onto him. For me, having him on one of my fantasy leagues, I didn't really complain about it. I mean, he dropped like 30 for me, so I'm perfectly fine with it. You know, he could choke a game as long as he's scoring 3 touchdowns. Am I right? So, you know, and I'm not a Browns fan, so not much really was affecting me there. But I mean, other than I predicted the Browns to win, so it just kind of hurt my record, predictions wise. But the Browns, you know, that defense just, I mean, I really don't know what was happening. I don't recall any major injuries being on the Browns defense, so it just looked like in that final minute they just could not get anything done, and they could not guard anybody. And so they allowed that touchdown, Garrett Wilson with the touchdown, or with the game-winning catch for the win. The Browns offense played really well. I'm actually liking the system with Jacoby Brissett. And I'm not sure if they're, I mean, I would, if I was the Browns here, and if you're winning games or at least getting close in games with Jacoby Brissett, I would just keep him in for the remainder of the season, definitely depending on what the verdict is on the Deshaun Watson appeal from the NFL, because currently he is only going to be out for 11 games, but the NFL is looking to have a full season suspension. So we'll have to see, or at least an indefinite suspension. So we'll have to see what goes on there. But I really like the system with Jacoby Brissett. Now, obviously, there's some holes. Jacoby Brissett's not the best quarterback in the league, but he's not the worst. Okay, he can play. He could start as quarterback. Nick Chubb, obviously, having a really good start to the season. I don't really know what his rushing yard total is already, just off the top of my head, but having him on my fantasy team definitely does help me gauge where he's at, and he's putting up 20 to 30 points a week, or at least week 1 he put up 20, I want to say, around 20, and then last week he put up 30, so very happy to have him on my fantasy team, but it just looks like he's having a career year this season, and I feel like that is mainly due to the passing attack not being as well developed, but Nick Chubb is doing his thing. The Browns receivers are okay. Amari Cooper gets his first touchdown, and he was actually kind of going off. I had him on my bench, unfortunately. I mean, luckily I won the matchup pretty easily. Okay, but I did have him on my bench, and I was not expecting him to do as good as he did. And I mean, he was doing his thing. So hopefully they kind of give the ball to him a little bit more. I think that's going to be a new weapon for Jacoby Brissett. But overall, I think the game was just blown by that Browns defense. They just really need to contain the Jets offense within 1 minute. And they just weren't able to do that. And they ended up losing 31-30. One of the more surprising losses of the week. But I think the Browns, they just need to fix their defense, and I think they should be fine. So as for this game, I do have the Browns winning at home by about 9. I think it's going to be a really good battle. AFC North division rivalry, you know, goes back years, and I think it's going to be a great matchup. Both teams, you know, have some proving to do to, you know, NFL fans and their fans as well. So they're probably going to be working hard to see what they can do, and try to prove themselves that they are worthy. You know, it was just a 1 week loss. So both teams are coming in hungry in this matchup. I can't wait to watch, or I probably won't be able to watch it, but since I have work. But I think it's going to be a great game for you guys to watch, and really see what they're going to do there. But yeah, I have the Browns winning this one. Okay, now next we have an AFC East matchup. Here we have the Bills at the Dolphins. Now the Bills coming off of a pretty dominating win, if I do say so myself, against the Titans. I believe winning 41-7. Really limiting. I mean, okay. First of all, okay. I mean, the Bills are kind of showing why they're the consensus Super Bowl favorites. Okay, they're showing it. Josh Allen's showing why he's favored to win the MVP, even though he's not, in my opinion, he's not the MVP this season. But he's showing off why he is favored in the betting, in the sports books, why he is the favored MVP candidate. And this Bills defense is even showing why they were actually ranked number 1 last season. And I think they're just trying to get their get back for not making a single Pro Bowl, or any of those players making a Pro Bowl last year, even with them having the number 1 defense in the league. And I mean, the offense was just great. It was delivering. Okay, I have Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs in one of my fantasy leagues, and it is an amazing duo. Okay, Josh Allen had almost 30. Stephon Diggs had a little bit over 40 points. I mean, it was a great day. Okay, Stephon Diggs he's a wide receiver. Okay, I feel like a lot of people knew he was a good wide receiver going into Buffalo. And then that first season in Buffalo last year, I think he showed, okay, he's a stud. He's one of those guys. But this season, I think, is probably going to be one of the best seasons of his career. I think he's shown why he can be one of the greatest wide receivers in the league right now. I mean, he just looked good against the Titans, from what I've seen. And Josh Allen doing Josh Allen things, offensive line holding up really well. And then for the defensive side of the ball, just amazing. Holding an entire offense to only 7 points, with one of the greatest running backs in the league as of right now, Derrick Henry, who hasn't looked that good over the past 2 weeks. And they held him to only 25 yards. Von Miller, definitely a big part of that. Just adding more defense, I think, is just what they needed, or at least more depth in their defense side, is what the Bills needed. And clearly, Von Miller was that guy. He's doing his thing. Jordan Poyer's doing his thing. Khair Alam actually is doing really good. I think he's going under the radar for most people. And he, again, was one of my favorites coming out of the draft class. So he was doing great. Yeah, just overall, I mean, that team's doing great. And they don't even have Trey White yet. He's still going to be on probably until week 5, I want to say. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what I've heard. So, I mean, overall, I think this is going to be a great team, great roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball. That defense is great. And, as I say, defense wins championships. So, the Bills just looking like a great team. Now going into the Dolphins side of the ball. Offensively, they did great last week. Now, I was looking at what Tua was doing. And Tua was he was the passing leader for this week, I want to say. But, I mean, he looked a little bit inconsistent, but I'll still cut him some slack. He was making the passes when most of the passes needed to be made, so that was great to see from him. And then, I mean, Tyreek Hill was going off, and Jalen Waddle was going off, especially coming back from however many points they were down against the Ravens, who were actually, I mean, they were doing really good at the beginning there, and they almost made a comeback there, or no, a comeback, but the Dolphins were able to get a comeback. And I mean, they were doing great. Their run game hasn't been doing much, but their play action attack has been great with Mike McDaniel. These defenses can't really. They have to, since they do have to respect the run game. That speed of both Waddle and Hill. Sorry, it's gonna be really hard to beat if you are a defense and try to contain that. And they were definitely exploiting that against the Ravens, especially in that second half. And that Jalen Waddle touchdown with 30 seconds left was a great example of that. And I mean, the Ravens are doing good defensively. Wasn't the best showing at the beginning of the game. They allowed a 75-yard touchdown by Rashad Bateman. But Devin Duvernay was doing his thing. And I mean, overall, I mean, the Ravens defense was really, or offense was really, really tearing up the Miami defense. And it wasn't that good by the Miami defense. Now they did start to pick it up near the second half, making these 3 and outs, causing the Ravens not to score, for allowing the offense to really get the ball back and score some points to get these to start the comeback. So overall, the Dolphins are an okay team. I think they definitely need a lot to work on with the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, I think just getting to a little bit more acclimated to the offense and his fix on his accuracy. And I think he'll do great. It's just a matter of if he's going to be able to make those passes on time and really stay consistent. Now, as for this game, I think it's going to be a close one. I have it being within a 1-score game. I think it's going to be great. But I mean, this is the AFC East matchup that contains who's going to be 1 or 2. Mainly the Bills probably going to be 1. But the Dolphins, I think they're a good 2 team to have at the AFC East, because I mean the Jets and Patriots. Those 2 teams don't really look like they're going to be able to make it to the playoffs, so it's going to be a really good matchup here. But as for this one, I have the Bills. I think the Bills just overall are the better team compared to the Dolphins, and they're going to be able to secure the win here. Okay, now next I have the Bengals at the Jets. Now the Bengals coming off of a surprising and saddening loss to the Dallas Cowboys, losing off of a game-winning field goal. Now the Bengals defensively didn't look that good. I mean, they're doing okay in the beginning. Obviously, you're going up against Cooper Rush, the backup quarterback, and against a struggling offensive line from the looks of it, who really can't get Zeke that much off the ground here. But once it hit that second half, that Bengals defense kind of started going out, and Tony Pollard was kind of taking over the game, and he was doing his thing there. And yeah, just defensively, it was a stamina issue there at the end, and then offensively, just not the best showing. The offensive line, again, just letting even more defensive linemen come through. And linebackers. I mean, the Bengals just did not look good whatsoever in this one. Even though they were able to keep it close, it just kind of felt like, they were kind of just selling the game away at this point. And the Cowboys were able to get it done off that game-winning field goal. Then as for the Jets coming off of a big comeback. At one point they were down 14-31, I want to say. Yeah, 14-31. Or not 14-31. Because they were up. I don't know. Jeez. Hold on, I'm forgetting the score now. Hold up, if they scored. Okay, anyway. They were up, or they were down. They were down by a lot of points, okay? And, yeah, it was 30-14. They were down by a lot of points, and they were able to get it done, okay? And they were able to get it done. They went ahead. I mean, after that touchdown from Nick Chubb, it kind of looked like things were over. Did not look good. But then they marched on the field, and in like seconds, not even a minute, seconds, they get a touchdown. I want to say that to Garrett Wilson, right? Then they kick the onside kick. They recover the onside kick, and with basically no time left on the clock, it was a touchdown pass to Garrett Wilson, coming across the middle of the end zone, and he gets the touchdown. His first 2 big touchdowns in the league as a rookie. So that was great to see. Breece Hall, another rookie who scored a touchdown this game as well. But yeah, the Browns kind of choked it. Jets did their thing. they were able to get that comeback, which was really needed, and something that they really need to get. And I mean, Joe Flacco looking like a decent starting quarterback in there for Zach Wilson. And is this another scare for Zach Wilson? Because if everybody remembers Mike White from last year, okay, real OGs remember Mike White from last season, okay? Mike White, everybody was calling him a legend after I think they beat the Bengals with Mike White. So then everybody's calling Mike White the GOAT, and then kind of Mike White fell off. But Zach Wilson, everybody was kind of questioning where Zach Wilson is when he's going to be starting. But Zach Wilson still got the starting job after Mike White really didn't do much after that game. And now they're playing the Bengals again with the backup quarterback in Joe Flacco. And Joe Flacco came off a pretty decent game against the Browns, and I think he might be able to do it again for this one. The Jets defense was okay. It was kind of the Jets defense. And they really didn't do much to really help out the offense. And I think that's really one of the weaker parts of the Jets team is just their defense. But as for this game, kind of alluded to it before, I think the Jets could get it done. I have it as a 1-point game. I think the Jets are going to take the dub here. I think it's going to be a really close one again. The Bengals just keep getting to close matchups here, but the Jets, I feel like, they're coming off this high of getting this comeback against the Browns. The Bengals are kind of in a slump here. The last 2 games, losing pretty close to game-winning field goals. Maybe the Jets kick a game-winning field goal here to put the Bengals away. So as for this one, I have the Jets winning by 1. Next up, we have the Raiders at the Titans. Two teams that didn't do that well. Now, Raiders' perspective, they were up 20-0 at halftime, and they somehow proceeded to lose 29-23. Okay, so that one kind of hurt. I wasn't able to watch all of the game as I did have work, but I watched a little bit of it. I watched up until halftime where they're up 20-0. So I was like, okay, this one seems pretty nice, right? And then I go on break, and then boom, I see scoop and score for a touchdown. Like, I was like, oh man. But I actually watched the tape. So going over the Raiders offense, they did great at the beginning. They came out with a touchdown from Devontae Adams. And then, the offense is doing its thing, okay? Went up 20-0. Then in the second half, they stalled out, okay? And they weren't really doing much. Really couldn't get much done. The Cardinals kind of made a really good game plan for them, and they just weren't able to get anything much. I mean, they got 3 points. And then defense side of the ball, likewise, they're doing their thing in the first half, but the Cardinals were able to adjust. And Kyler Murray did his thing there at the end, and they were able to tie it. Okay, the defense allowed a tie, or not allowed the Cardinals to tie it up to go into overtime, and then they actually got a stop on the Cardinals, and then in overtime. So then the Raiders got the ball back, and then Hunter Renfrow fumbled the ball, but the Raiders got it back. And then Hunter Renfrow fumbled it again 2 plays later, which then led to that Byron Murphy scoop and score, which I like Byron Murphy as a player. He's a great player. But it does look like Hunter Renfrow is being evaluated for a concussion off of that last play, as it did take a shoulder pad to the head on that fumble play that led to the scoop and score. So there could be a chance that he doesn't play in this game. It just depends on what the results are on the concussion protocol test. So we'll have to see what happens there for the Raiders. But they weren't really utilizing Darren Waller that much during this game. And the targets to Darren Waller definitely dropped since the addition of Devontae Adams, which is kind of obvious. But which is kind of interesting because I feel like he's one of their bigger targets last season. It doesn't look like he's regressed or anything. It's just he's just not getting the ball as much as he used to. And just overall, the Raiders did not play that good in the second half. So maybe they're able to, learn and adapt to that and possibly get just stamina and being able to play both halves is really important, especially if you're up 20-0. Not to get complacent with that. This past week there have been some comebacks, so you can't really get complacent with the lead. So you just have to keep adding on to it, and playing both halves. But then as for the Titans, now the Titans gone off two pretty bad weeks, and they just played the Bills yesterday. So today's Tuesday. So yeah, yesterday was Monday. They did not do good against the Bills whatsoever. Luckily I didn't have the Titans being one of the playoff teams. However, I did have them coming in second in the AFC South, and they're currently tied for last because the only team that has won in the AFC South is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Okay, and when I did see that on CBS Sports, there was one guy that said that the Jaguars would win the AFC South. So that guy I know is very happy because everybody doubted him, probably said he was crazy. I said he was crazy, but it so far is coming into fruition. They weren't able to get Derrick Henry that many touches or yards, just due to that Bills defense. They just haven't been able to get him anywhere. Same with the Giants game though too. Just was not looking good, and they're just not able to get Derrick Henry the ball and get him eaten, like he usually would. The offense just not looking great. The targets are decent. Traylon Burks didn't really do much this game. And overall, Titans offense just you can see the visible hole that AJ Brown has left on that offense. And it's kind of made the offense one-dimensional, which I feel like the Bills are really good at, making an offense one-dimensional and kind of cutting out either a passing or running game, and they cut out the running game for the Titans, and you saw what it did there. They were only able to put up 7 points to the Bills' 41, and the Titans just weren't doing good. And if the Raiders are able to apply that pressure that the Bills were to the running game of the Titans, I think the Raiders could come out here. So I think with this game, I have the Raiders winning by 7. Now, next up, we have the Saints at the Panthers. Now, the Saints coming off of a loss against the Buccaneers, which is kind of boring. The Saints offense did decent. Sorry, that's my chair. But they weren't really doing all that much. It was like tied 3-3 for like the majority of the game, until the Bucs kind of separated the score. Offensively, Jameis Winston wasn't able to do much. Alvin Kamara was out for this game, so they had Mark Ingram coming in, and Mark Ingram did have a fumble in the game, in the red zone too, pretty crucial red zone area, especially for this game, because it was still 3-3 at that point. So they definitely needed to put some points on the board, and they weren't able to due to that fumble. Michael Thomas was okay. He's putting up Michael Thomas numbers. But Chris Olave isn't doing much. Looks like Jarvis Landry is going to be mainly the number 2, so Chris Olave hasn't really been getting that many targets. So yeah, it's just not looking that good for the Saints offense. And up until they get Alvin Kamara back, I believe he also had a rib issue. And then as for the Saints defense, they were doing okay, limiting the Bucs to only 3 points in the first half, and really limited Leonard Fournette's performance. They weren't really able to use the rushing attack, but the Buccaneers were able to kind of get that separation in lead and win 20-10 near the end of the game. And Saints really couldn't do much. Speaking of defense, the loss of Marshawn Lattimore for this game, in the fight that they had between him and Mike Evans. So he's gonna be out for this game against the Panthers, but I don't think it'll cause that many issues. Now looking at the Panthers offense, they went up against a Giants team that I wouldn't say has the best offense, but the Giants were still able to get it done against the Panthers. I think Brian DeBoer is a great coach. But speaking of the Panthers, though, Baker Mayfield, he's okay. He's just kind of showing why the Browns didn't really believe in him as much, and that he hasn't really changed much as a quarterback, especially in a new system. The turnovers definitely were costly for the Panthers. They got 2 big fumbles at the beginning of the game to allow the Giants to get up to 6-0. However, they did tie it back up at 6-0, the Panthers, so it was 6 up. But then the Giants were just able to pull away and win that game. And the Panthers defense really just could not control Saquon Barkley. And that offense the picks and the fumbles just were big, crucial things in having them lose. But as for this game, it's an NFC South matchup. I think it's going to be close. I have this being a 1-point game in the Panthers' favor. I think the Panthers finally get their win this week. I said the Panthers winning the first week, then Browns win, and then had Panthers winning last week, then the Giants win. So hopefully the Panthers can finally get their first win of the season. They just haven't really been able to utilize Christian McCaffrey that much this season, so they definitely need to get the ball to him. Maybe, hopefully he can do something. Overall, just not looking good for the Saints. And so I got this one for the Panthers. Next up, we have the Ravens at the Patriots. Now, the Ravens, coming off of a pretty bad upset loss against the Dolphins. They had the lead, and they ended up choking. I already talked about it in the Dolphins preview. But the Ravens offense just, they look good, okay? That 75-yard bomb to Rashad Bateman, the touchdown pass to Devin Duvernay. The Ravens look great. But then in the second half is where teams have to play both halves. Especially, again, you can't get complacent with the lead here. And the Ravens got complacent, and they just didn't have a plan for that second half Dolphins team. And, they ended up losing that one, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, the Ravens really couldn't do much. They tried, but that last touchdown drive, Jalen Waddle was just fast, Tyreek Hill was just fast. They don't really have any corners or DBs to really step up and get to either of those receivers, so they just weren't able to stop them. And I think that's one of the weak points for the Ravens, is just having a slower secondary. Then as for the Patriots, a surprising win, at least in my case, against the Steelers. They kind of duked it out there near the end, and they kind of just had grinded the win out, okay? Like, they didn't really have a special game. Nothing was really impressive on either side of the ball. They just were able to play football, and they were able to get it done against the Steelers. But as for this game, I have the Ravens winning by 19. I think this one's going to be a pretty big beatdown by the Ravens for this one. Next up, I have the Lions at the Vikings. Now, the Lions getting their first win of the season, okay? It was great to watch it. I was able to watch it before I work, and I was very happy, okay? I was happy, okay? When the Lions win, the sun is a little bit brighter, okay? Everything's just like somebody lit, the saturation went up, okay? Plus 1 point when the Lions win, okay? Just everything looks brighter, everything looks nice. You're in a happy, feel-good mood. That's what I feel when the Lions win. And they beat the Commanders they beat them pretty good. Obviously, some things to nitpick. Offensively, I'm a Jared Goff hater, so obviously I'm going to say that Jared Goff was one of the weaker points of the offense, even though he is nominated for Air Player of the Week. He was doing his thing, okay? He's doing his thing, what a quarterback is supposed to do. He was doing his thing. But shout out Amon-Ra St. Brown, man. Okay? 8 consecutive games with 8+ receptions, joining a class of Michael Thomas, Antonio Brown, Anquan Bolden, I know I'm forgetting one more receiver. But I mean, overall, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's building up a career for himself. He's only in his second year. He's doing great. He's showing himself as a true number one target for the Lions offense, and a true number one target for Jared Goff. T.J. Hawkinson looks a little bit off. He was dropping a few passes. Same with DJ Shark, who's been dropping passes, but we just have to let him get acclimated, I think, with the offense, and maybe get on the same page as Jared Goff. Josh Reynolds had a good touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 2 receiving touchdowns. And the biggest player, the player of the week, in my opinion, DeAndre Swift, or at least for the Lions. Player of the day for the Lions, DeAndre Swift. I mean, he was going absolutely off. He had a 50 plus rushing yard carry, which is his second of the season already in his first 2 games of the season. I mean, he's him. He's him. He is him. He's that dog. He's got that dog in him. He had 1 drop pass, but that was about it. I mean, he was doing his thing. He had a touchdown, nice catch, nice recovery, caught it, fell down, got back up, made about 4 defenders miss, and scored a touchdown. He's just a great player. Jamal Williams did his thing. And then defensively, great performance by the defense, in my opinion. First drive, they get a 3-and-out. Second drive, strip sack by Charles Harris out of the back of the end zone. That's a safety. And then Aiden Hutchinson with 3 sacks. This week was actually his first game that he got a sack, and then he added 2 more onto that one. So great performance by him. But near the end of the game, he did have a noticeable limp, so hopefully it does get better. Maybe that was just a game day thing, just a little bit of a cramp, possibly. But Charles Harris had a good game. Malcolm Rodriguez was doing great. He is, for this week, he was the highest graded rookie linebacker according to PFF. So I mean, he was doing his thing too. I mean, overall, the Lions were performing on all cylinders, but again, you had to play through both halves, And the Commanders, they started off the second half with a touchdown and another touchdown and 2-point conversion. They were getting it close, They were cutting it really close. It was 22-15 at one point. The Lions were able to score. The Commanders scored, and then the Lions responded with another score. So, great performance by the Lions, not allowing that comeback, but also just playing through both halves, and that's something that they really needed to do, and they were able to do it. And that's something that you don't usually see as a Lions fan. Mainly it's either a first or second half team with the Lions, and they were able to play both. And it was great. It was a great performance by the defense overall. Getting sacks on Carson Wentz when they weren't able to get sacks on Jalen Hurts whatsoever. I think they only got like 1 or 2. And Jalen Hurts just slipping out of them. There is a big issue with the sack problems for the Lions, but they were able to get in the backfield. That rush is just amazing. Coming off last year where they had one of the worst rushing defenses in the league, their rush defense looks really nice. And overall, the Lions had a really great win. Now going over to the Vikings side of the ball. Pretty bad loss to the Eagles. Now, luckily, both the Lions and Vikings have played against the Eagles, so I can kind of compare the two. And the Vikings defense just wasn't able to get to the backfield as much. Now, granted, the Vikings did allow less points than the Lions, but the Vikings just weren't able to really respond. They lost 24-7. Justin Jefferson was pretty much locked up for that game. Darius Slay had 2 interceptions. So I mean overall, Kirk Cousins, he's a little bit of a turnover machine. So we don't really know what's happening there, but and that again, this could be his last season in Minnesota. So the Vikings are a little bit interesting of a team. obviously Justin Jefferson is there, so that would be a key worry in this Lions matchup, is because their DBs aren't the best, so that would be a concern. But as for this one, I do have the Lions winning this one by, I want to say, by 21. I have the Lions winning this one by 3 scores. The Lions are tied for first in the league with the highest scoring offense, up there with the Chiefs and the Bills. So I think the Lions are there. I think they're finally a team that can do something. And why not prove it against an NFC North opponent who is going to battle you for that championship position, when a lot of people are doubting this team. So give me the Lions here by about 3 scores. Now, speaking of the Eagles, we have an NFC East matchup here. We have the Philadelphia Eagles at the Washington Commanders. Now, the Eagles getting a commanding win over the Vikings. That A.J. Brown to Jalen Hurts connection looks great still. Offensively, they're able to do their thing. Defensively, they only held the Vikings to only 7 points, and they contained Justin Jefferson pretty well. Darius Slay again with the 2 interceptions. Kirk Cousins just isn't the best prime time, statistically at least. And then as for the Commanders, they lost to the Lions, and it wasn't the best performance in the first half, but again in the second half they were able to really pick it up, and they really started scoring. And they just had some defensive problems, just allowing the Lions to score, and the offense just not being able to, the offense did turn over the ball a couple times. And that offensive line wasn't really that good. They were kind of allowing the Lions to get in the backfield. So, as for this game, I got the Eagles winning by 3 here. I think it's going to be just somewhat close since it's an NFC East matchup. And these ones are a little bit, or in division rivalries are a little bit more, close. They're a little bit closer. They're a little bit more competitive. So, I got the Eagles winning by 3 here. I think the Eagles just overall are the better team. Okay, now as for the next matchup, we have the Chiefs at the Colts. Now the Chiefs getting a pretty close win there against the Chargers. They had the lead going into halftime, and then Justin Herbert, man. I mean, I'm going to talk about it more when the Chargers matchup comes up against the Jaguars, but Justin Herbert he almost let a comeback against the Chiefs defense, and that defense just wasn't looking that good. The Chiefs offense wasn't really able to utilize Travis Kelce as they normally do, but the Chiefs still did their thing. Patrick Mahomes did his thing. The rushing attack was great, and the Colts, they came out against the Jaguars and just dropped a goose egg. Okay, they did terrible. That was a really bad game. Jonathan Taylor wasn't really doing much. Matt Ryan just shown that he wasn't that good of an addition. Overall, it was a terrible performance by the Colts. They weren't able to drop any points against the Jaguars defense that is subpar at best. They still have young stars that they need to develop, and the offense isn't that good either. And that Colts defense was just allowing them to just walk over them. So, it's not a good performance by the Colts. So I had this one as the Chiefs winning by 26. I think the Chiefs are probably gonna take this one home easily. Okay, now the next matchup, we have the Texans at the Bears. Now the Texans coming off of a close loss to the Broncos. Either the Broncos are a bad team or the Houston Texans are getting better, and I think it's just both. They were able to do their thing against Russell Wilson and that Broncos offense. Now they don't have Jerry Jeudy, but the Texans were still able to do their thing, and keep that game close. And then as for the Bears, they got handed. Okay, they got handled. They're like, yeah, here you go. Okay, against the Packers on Sunday night, dropped only 7 points, to the Packers 24, and they just weren't able to get much done. But as for this game, I have the Texans winning by 5. Again, I had the Texans winning last week. They kind of let me down, but I feel like this one's actually going to be a really close matchup. I think it's going to be really tight, but give me the Texans for this one. Okay, now next up we have the Jaguars at the Chargers. Now the Jaguars dropping 24 points on the Colts unanswered. Limited the Colts to only 0 points. The offense was doing their thing. Defense was doing their thing. And they were able to get it done. On the Chargers side of the ball, offensively, they were doing decent. Okay, they were doing great and decent. I mean, they were kind of But I mean, Justin Herbert going out there for the last 2 drives, obviously injured. I mean, it was kind of weird because for one play he couldn't throw the ball, and then he comes out there next play, throws an absolute dime down the middle of the field. I mean, yeah, Justin Herbert's that guy. He's my MVP. That's why he's my MVP. It looks like he has a fractured bone cartilage or rib cartilage. So, I'm not sure if he's gonna be out. I do know that the same doctor that punctured Tyrod Taylor's lung for the same injury is going to be doing it to Justin Herbert, but that could just be a rumor spreading around. Now, the Chargers defense was doing okay. I mean, they kind of were able to stop the Chiefs from really scoring more points and almost help the offense lead a comeback. But the Chargers offense just wasn't able to complete it there, and the Chiefs ended up winning in a really close one. But as for this game, I have the Chargers winning by 1, mainly just for the questionable injury on Justin Herbert. If his rib is going to be okay, if he is going to be if he is going to be able to throw, and then that Jacksonville offense looks pretty nice, but I still don't think they're going to be able to beat the Chargers, but I still have this one being a pretty close game. Now next up we have an NFC West divisional matchup. We have the Rams at the Cardinals. Now the Rams, pretty good win over the Falcons. Offensively they did pretty nice. However, they did almost lead, almost let a comeback happen. They were up on the Falcons 28-3. And the Falcons almost got that comeback. So we, maybe we'll have to see what happens there. But Jalen Ramsey was able to get that game-stealing interception on Marcus Mariota, just mossing a receiver for that one. But I still don't think he's that good of a corner. He's kind of showing that he's regressed. Okay, because he can say he's him all he wants. Okay, I'm also a Jalen Ramsey hater, but not a hater, but I mean, Jalen Ramsey, in my opinion, is overrated. Okay, he's overrated because he's going up against good receivers and he can't do anything, and he goes up against Falcons receiving core that isn't really that developed and isn't that good either, and it's like bragging about it. So he gets the game-stealing interception. The Rams look pretty decent. Now, as for the Cardinals, they were having a rocky start against the Raiders, but they were able to come back near the end, force the fumble, make it into overtime, force the fumble, and win in overtime with that touchdown. Kyler Murray looked pretty great in the pocket. He was doing great, especially on that 20-second play. And I mean, they were doing their thing. Cardinals were able to get that comeback, and we'll have to see about this game. I think it's going to be close since it is a divisional matchup. But give me the Cardinals by 4 here. I think it's going to be a really close game. But I feel like the Cardinals I think they're finally getting back on track, trying to find a good game plan so that so to kind of fill that hole of DeAndre Hopkins and get Kyler Murray, kind of a balanced, mixed bag of targets and plays that he can utilize to form his ability to it, I guess you could say. But again, give me the Cardinals by 4. Then next up, we have the Packers at the Buccaneers, which is a classic in the NFC matchups. I mean, I think these type of matchups are some of the best, kind of just out of division rivalries. But the Packers coming off a pretty commanding win against the Bears, winning 24-7. Offense and defense just kind of did their thing there, and they were able to combine there and do their thing against the Bears and did well. Okay. And the Buccaneers started off on a rocky start against a okay Saints defense. It was still tied 3-3 by halftime. I want to say in the second half is when they started scoring. Offensively, Tom Brady looked very frustrated with the offense, but they were able to straighten up there near the end, and as well as the defense, they were able to straighten up at the end, and ended up taking that one 20-10. But as for this game, give me the Buccaneers by 3. And then next up, we have the Falcons at the Seahawks. Birds versus Birds. Now the Falcons coming off of a heartbreaking loss to the Rams. They were down by a lot, and they were forcing that comeback. They were almost getting there, but then that pick by Marcus Mariota at the end. I think they just need to develop their wide receiver core a little bit better. They just don't have that many good targets for Marcus Mariota to really go to. And I feel like that kind of limits the offense on what they can do. And then as for the Seahawks, they got whooped by the 49ers. Trey Lance ended up getting injured. I'll talk about that in the next matchup. But they were getting smacked around by Jimmy Garoppolo, and that defense, the Seahawks offensive line just was not blocking whatsoever, and the 49ers defense was getting back there to him. So the Seahawks, they were getting whooped, man. Maybe it was truly a 1 week wonder. So as for this game, give me the Falcons by 15. Now next up for Sunday Night Football, we have the 49ers at the Broncos. Now the 49ers did their thing against the Seahawks last week. Unfortunately, Trey Lance did get injured, and it looks like his season may be done since it was an ankle. What was that? What was I trying to say? I was trying to say ankle fracture. I don't know. I combined the words, but ankle fracture, or at least a broken ankle, because I want to say it was dislocated, but it wasn't all the way turned around. His foot wasn't all the way turned around, so it wasn't a full dislocation of the ankle, I want to say. So I believe it was an ankle fracture, and he did end up getting surgery for it, or 2 surgeries for it. So they did say that he's in good condition, but his ability to play is in question as of right now. But I do believe that that could be the end of the season for him. But overall, the 49ers were able to get everything done, especially with Jimmy Garoppolo in. And I believe that they'll have George Kittle in for this one as well, since he has been out for the past 2 games. And then for the Broncos, they just aren't looking good whatsoever. And everybody's just calling out Russell Wilson for it. But, the offense and defense just isn't looking good, and they really struggle against a pretty mediocre Texans squad. So, that is, their team is kind of questionable here. So, I don't think they can beat a team as good as the 49ers. So, give me the 49ers by 3. Now next, the last matchup on Monday Night Football, we have the Cowboys at the Giants. Now the Cowboys coming off of a clutch win against the Bengals, winning off of a game-winning field goal. First game with Cooper Rush in for the season, obviously replacing Dak Prescott, who broke his hand. And Cooper Rush looked decent. He looked like a backup quarterback. Zeke wasn't able to get anything off the ground offensively. Tony Pollard was doing his thing though. And I believe Tony Pollard's probably going to morph into the running back 1 for the Cowboys. He's getting more rushes, and he's getting more targets in the receiving game. So it looks like Tony Pollard could take that number 1 spot from Zeke. And I feel like the Cowboys should probably sell really high on Zeke, try to trade him, because it just doesn't look good. I feel like Tony Pollard is kind of a consensus RB1. And especially if Zeke doesn't want to play RB2, then that's when you would trade him. But it is still good to have a running back tandem. And the defense looked okay. They were letting the Bengals kind of get there, but they were able to get some stops, and the Cowboys offense was able to get downfield enough for that game-winning field goal. Then as for the Giants, they started off pretty hot, 2 turnovers with the fumbles, but the offense wasn't able to capitalize off of it. And they were only able to kick 2 field goals, but Brian DeBoer there, it looks like he's really changing the culture for the Giants, and they were able to get it done. It was a close one against the Panthers offense and defense, but the Giants were able to get it done. It was a really close game, so this one's going to be an exciting one to watch in-division rivalry in the NFC East. But as for this one, give me the Giants by 17. I think the way that they're playing, I think they should be able to beat the Cowboys who are led by Cooper Rush. And that'll be all for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in and listening and watching all the way through. If you are on YouTube, make sure you go ahead and comment, like, and subscribe. And also hit the notification bell so you will be notified of all the videos that I do drop. And if you are listening to the podcast on a podcast platform, make sure you leave the podcast a follow or give it a 5-star rating, or give it a 5-star rating. That'd be greatly appreciated. But again, thank you for listening all the way through, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.